Record. Hey friend, Catherine here, founder and creator of Meet Me at the Well. I'm so glad you found my little footprint here in the podcast world. It's an honor to take up some space in your heart and mind today, and I pray it brings great joy into your life, one episode at a time. I have the absolute honor of introducing someone that I've always looked up to since I first met her when I joined the soccer team sophomore year of high school. Kristie has always been a light on the hill through her kindness, motherhood, and as a wife. But her faith has always stood out to me, especially when she walked through a heartbreaking season of loss. Kristie lives in North Carolina with her husband and 4 children. She is a former missionary, a health enthusiast, and now a homeschooling mother. Her faith was tested in 2020 when she lost her 3rd child at 19 weeks pregnant. Today, she will share her story of how God carried her through that dark season. I want to preface that we will be speaking about the loss of a child, so if this is triggering for you, please prepare your heart, take it at your pace to find strength and support from a mom like Kristie who understands your pain. Skip this episode entirely if you need to, or come back at a later time. So glad to have you on the podcast, Kristie.
Thanks for having me, Catherine. I'm excited to be here.
Thanks, friend. I've watched you walk through this just via social media, and it's just been incredible to see how God has, restored your life and just brought you through that. And I've always wanted to know like how you did it, obviously God, but there's so much more that goes into that with you and your husband and your other kids. So I just really want to hear you share about your personal testimony, like just with your relationship with God leading up to this and your marriage and your family, and then your testimony about your son, Jocko.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is a really, really exciting thing for me to be able to share. I think a lot of people that have gone through a miscarriage like this, they actually desire to have someone that they can share with. And especially in my case, just having the experience of having God hold my hand and hold my family through all of it, there's such a beautiful story just woven in. So I'm super excited about it. But I grew up in a Christian family, so I've had a really great life, and I'm super fortunate to have parents that were intentional about discipling us and teaching us about Christ and getting us in church and all those things. And so I've known God to some extent, for my whole life.
Yeah.
I'd say that it became more real to me when I was a teenager and I really started encountering him and I became hungry. And I was reading the word for myself. And if you've been there, you know how that feels, where all of a sudden it's like, okay, this is mine now.
Yeah.
So I was a teenager probably when that happened. And my family moved to India for a season, and I had been on mission trips before. So I was like, this is going to be awesome. We're going to get to live overseas. And it's like, and when I was doing missions trip in high school, like it was like the most exciting thing ever to just like work with the poor and to love on kids and to learn their language. So moving there was just a really exciting thing for me. So we spent 2 years in India with my family, and then we moved back to the States, and I did Bible school for a year.
With your
At that
family.
time,
It was with your
yes,
husband, right? And your
yes,
kids. Yeah.
yeah. So I lived in India like with my immediate family for 2
Okay.
years. Moved
Okay.
back to the States, and then I met my husband when I was at Bible school.
Okay. Okay. Because I
So
remember
that was
thinking that.
like, so met my husband, and we dated for 2 years, and then we got married, and he is just like my best friend in the whole world. And so after we were in Kansas City, I was there for like 5 years. My husband and I wanted to like do something together, whether it was YWAM or like, I was like, because missions was like such a huge part of my heart.
Yeah.
So we ended up going back overseas for 2 years.
Wow.
And we lived in India, the same place that I was before.
That's amazing.
And I got to work with underprivileged girls for 2 years. And my husband was running a CrossFit gym, and we were just so thankful to be used by God in really cool ways. And after 2 years, we kind of passed our jobs onto the locals, which was kind of the goal. I
Hmm.
had my first child there. So Kaya was born in India. She's 8 now, but she was born in India. I was like super like nervous because we got pregnant and we like didn't even mean to. And
I feel
so I was like, yeah, so I was like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? So I ended up having this baby in India. And then we come home with our 10-month-old back to North Carolina. So
wow.
we've been in North Carolina for 8 years. And in that time, I had another child, my second daughter, Ely, once again, got pregnant super fast, super easy. Like, God's just been super good to me. And
Yeah.
then an accident, got pregnant again with Theo, my third, who is our next boy. So we have 3 kids at that point, and Kaya's 4, Ely is 2, and Theo is 1, and I get pregnant again. And it's like hilarious because we were like, we're doing this like natural family planning thing, like with this Catholic lady that's going to come to my house every day, and I got pregnant again. And so with my track record, I'm like, I'm so healthy, like, God's so good, like he's blessing my family.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful for all that. So we are now pregnant with our 4th kid, and my oldest is 4. And I, had a natural birth with Kaya in India. I had a home birth with Ely, a home birth with Theo. I'm not going to the doctor a whole lot because my track record is like, everything is going to be fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so we've got little Jocko in my belly, and I go to my 6-week appointment, and we see the little tiny. It was like we didn't know how far I was, but I was 6 weeks, and we see this tiny grain of rice, and the heart is beating, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like there's your baby, there's the baby, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, there's our brother or sister, like we're so excited.
Oh.
Um, and so as time is going on, I decided I'm not going to find out if this is a boy or a girl. Like I think this is probably our last one. Like let's just wait and find out.
Yeah.
And so I um so I'm not planning on having another ultrasound until the anatomy scan. And once you've had like 3 kids and everything's fine, it's just like you're not even thinking, is anything going to go wrong?
Yeah.
And I know like my sister, she had gone through 2 miscarriages and like
Mhm.
totally different experience in her pregnancies because she's like, I'm checking in at 12 weeks. I'm gonna make sure
Yeah.
everything's all
Yeah.
right. And it just wasn't my experience. So I'm like, everything's good, And so I go in at 18 weeks for our anatomy scan, thinking that everything is like totally great. I don't feel my babies until like 20, 21 weeks, anyways. So there's no way of telling like if anything's wrong.
Mhm.
Um, and like all my friends, like I have friends that I had 2 friends actually pregnant with me at the same time. We're all the same size. Like it's fine. So we go to our scan, and I have my whole family in the room, and my like little girls are like sitting on Josh's lap, and little Theo is like toddling around, and she goes to do the scan, and I can see at this point the baby's big, so you can kind of see
Yeah.
your baby. And I was like, oh look, I was like, look, the baby's sleeping. And the ultrasound tech said, I'm so sorry, something's wrong. I was like, okay. And she said, I'm not finding a heartbeat.
Oh my
And
God.
I was like, okay. And like everything in that moment, like I can't explain it. It feels like you were like in a tunnel, and like you're like, I'm gonna wake up in just a second. Like what she said is is gonna go, like this whole thing is not real. And so I'm just like in shock, and she's like, I'm so sorry. I see some other issues. She's like, it looks like trisomy 18, looks like there's a cystic hygroma. And I'm like, I don't even know what these are. Like
Yeah.
I've done no research on anything going wrong. And I'm like, what do I do? Like, I don't even know what to do. Like, what do you mean? And then I start crying. And then my husband looks at me. His first words are, he's still good. He's still good. And he's crying.
Oh
And
man.
I'm like, and so I'm looking at the lady, I'm like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I don't even know. Like, do I go to, I don't know. And so I'm just at loss for words. Like, this is also chaos because my 1-year-old is like knocking the trash can over. And then my little girls are going, what happened? What happened? What's wrong with the baby? Is there something wrong? And you're going, like, I guess let's just go and we'll call my midwife. And so so after that moment, it just proceeded to be, you know, a week long of phone calls with your midwife. You know, do I go to the emergency room? Like, where do I go? What do I do? Do I wait for the baby to pass on his own? Like, this is not a early pregnancy where you kind of just bleed. Like, you have to go into labor and push a baby out. And um so it was terrifying for me. And the thought of, you know, how do I even prep myself for this? Like, I'm, you know, usually you have 40 weeks to prep to go into labor, and right now I have to like get it together because it could happen at any moment.
Yeah.
So it was a really tear-filled, exhausting experience to go home and be on the phone with, you're trying to grieve at the same time, and then you're also trying to figure out what the heck you're supposed to do.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, and so my midwife, thankfully I had the same midwife that had, you know, my previous babies with, and she's just amazing, and she's going through all the pros and cons. And she said, you know, it's not a bad idea to go into the emergency room, and see if they can admit you into labor and delivery. So we tried the emergency room. You're spending hours just sitting there and hoping to get to talk to a doctor. And, you know, we do the scan. Once again, there's no heartbeat. And the doctor is like, I really don't want to touch you because if I get you bleeding and I get you dilating, she's like, we could get the baby out, but then, you know, I don't know if I'm going to be able to. I'm hoping that the pitocin will, you know, contract your uterus to go back down, because if it doesn't, we're going to have to do a hysterectomy. And she's like, that would be worst case scenario. And I'm like,
Oh,
you're so fragile, like when you're going through something like this,
yeah.
that like, even though like a doctor's just telling you like worst case scenario, like when you hear a word like that, the amount of fear that comes into your heart, it's so overwhelming.
Oh gosh,
and
I'm sure.
and of course, like, you know, at the same time you're grieving, you're like, okay, my baby, like, is, I don't want my baby to be like pulled out of me. Like, I don't, you know,
Yeah.
you're also trying to figure out how the heck do I do this and like give dignity
Yeah.
to my baby if I can, you know? Um, so it was really hard. Like, it was difficult. And we left the ER. They said they didn't want to do anything. So then I'm talking with my midwife again, and she finds a different hospital that she's worked with. She said, the midwives, I've spoken to them, they will take you. So um I wish I could have just gone in whenever, but like rooms were full. So like I would wake up in the morning and have bags ready to go. And then I would get a phone call. The rooms are not available right now. You're gonna have to wait till tomorrow. And
Wow.
so, and it felt like the only thing I was like, I just feel like once I deliver my baby and I like see him, or I'm able to bury him, like if I can just get him, like he's in me, like if I can
Yeah.
just get him out, then I'll be able to like feel better, you know? Like that was kind of my thought process. And so like every morning, that it was probably happened 2 mornings in a row where it was like, you know, that's, you're not going in
Yeah.
today. It
Jeez.
was just like a blow.
Yeah.
Um and so, and I mean, and this is a week that went by, and I had my 3 other kids. So I'm still like showing, and I'm like trying to, you know, keep up with the things that we're doing. And I have people at the gym saying, you know how this happens, right? And because they think that I'm still pregnant, and which I am, but I'm like, we actually found out that, you know, this one's not going to make it. And they're like, I'm so sorry.
Oh my God.
So you just have it like, it is hard. Like you're in a very fragile state. Like when you're in the middle of it, it just feels
Yeah.
like your heart is made of glass.
Mm.
So we end up finally going in to see the midwives. And during that time, that whole week, like I was so like, gosh, I just want to get this kind of over with. But when I was going through my journal and I see, like, I purposefully like journaled every day to see how it was almost worked out for my good that the Lord had me in that waiting season.
Mm.
Because there were, days in the beginning where I was just petrified, because I'm like a home birthing mom. Like I'm like, very little medicine, like
Yeah.
hospital. I'm not comfortable. I'm just not comfortable there. And what's that going to be like? And so there's all this fear. And then as each day goes on, I just see the Lord like working on my heart through through my through how I'm speaking in my journal.
Yeah.
So like even in the beginning, you can see I'm just like, I don't know what's going to happen. Like, writing out worst case scenario, like, God, will you be with me even if this happens? And then towards the end, like I had things that in my journal that said, like, this is 6/23/20. And it says, I feel him so close to me because I know who he is. He's my father who loves me and fights for me. He has me in the palm of his hands and I'm safe. And I can't wait to encounter him tomorrow. So that was the day before I went in. And so I have this like shift in the Lord allowing me to go through like a waiting process of going in. It's like the Lord was working on my heart and like showing me, I'm not going to leave you. Like, this is actually an opportunity for you to hold my hand and for me to walk you through something really hard. Like, I'm going to be with you.
Oh,
And it took time for me to like really believe that and to
yeah.
let that be real.
Yeah.
Even right after, even as my stomach turns and my palms sweat, like I'll take a deep breath and breathe in the peace of God because it's there.
Mm.
So it's just cool to see that that was for my own good.
Yeah.
And when you're in it, you can't like you're why not today? Like, let's go. But sometimes that's for your own good. And
Yeah.
so yeah, so anyways, I got to the hospital and on the on the 24th of June in 2020, and they were extremely kind, like extremely accommodating, just like the sweetest nurse. Her name was Oki, I'll never forget. And the midwives were just so considerate and kind. And my midwife got to come with me, which was a huge deal because it's 2020. No one's allowed to come with you
Yeah.
anywhere. So I had my husband with me. Um, and so they check to see for a heartbeat, still no heartbeat, so we know. And I take the cytotech and we wait for the contractions to kick in. And I was expecting like this full blown labor, and it felt like a kiss from the Lord that it really was not as bad as I expected. And so I delivered him, um, and I held him in my hand as soon as he dropped out. And I forgot to say this, but at the ultrasound, I asked her, I said, is it a boy or girl? Because we hadn't known. And I was like, if I don't know if I'll ever know, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And she said she would, the ultrasound tech was shaking and she was like feeling awful for me. So it was quick. She said, I think it's a girl. So for that week, I was mourning the loss of a girl.
Oh, wow.
I don't think she got like a very good read.
Yeah.
And so I pushed him out and I'm holding him in my hand and I'm crying, but I look and I'm like, that's a boy. And I showed like Josh and my midwife, and Josh goes, it's Jocko.
Oh my God.
And it's crazy because I had been saying, I think this is a boy. And it even got to the point, in my pregnancy that my kids were calling him Jocko because we loved
Wow.
that name.
Yeah.
And so we're like, oh my God, it's Jocko. Like, and it was just like, was so sweet because I wanted this experience of delivering, my baby and being surprised.
Yeah. And you
And it
still
was like,
were.
I still got it. Yeah, like God was like, surprise, like here's your baby boy. And it was like just a kiss from the Lord in a moment of sadness where I was like, oh my gosh, I still got to have that experience.
Yeah. That's
Um,
awesome.
but he was 15 weeks gestation. So he died when he was 15 weeks, but I carried him to 19 weeks. It was 19 weeks when I delivered him. And I just expected him to be much smaller. He was like as big as my hand curled up.
Oh, wow.
And so to see that and to hold that and to think just about um how people dismiss that as like not a life is crazy to me because he
Yeah.
was huge. I was like, this is like a baby.
Yeah. I don't think
Um,
it breaks my heart that that is a thought for so many people.
oh my gosh, he had his face like looked like his siblings, like
Wow.
his little arm was tucked under his neck, and then he had his little foot like wrapped up
Oh,
and tucked under. He was like, it was like he was so, cozy and perfect in every way. And I just held him. We just held him like that and stared at him for so long. Um, I was worried about my placenta not coming out. That was something they were worried about. And we ended up delivering that with my midwife's help. Like I just got up and stood and used gravity and like we were able to deliver that, which was amazing because I was like, I don't
yeah.
want to have a DNC.
Yeah.
Um, and so it was like another like just piece where the Lord was like, I've got you, like I'm with you. Um, and so yeah, so the nurse asked me, she was like, can I take him? I'm gonna like weigh him and do all these things. And so she did. And she brought him back and he's in this like little blanket and he's got a little like hat on. It's like a little gray hat with a red pom pom on his head. And I'm just like sobbing. I'm like, he's
Yeah.
so cute. And like, and it's like all these dreams that I had written out in my journal about like, I dreamed that like I would, just teach you things and get you dressed and like do little things that I'd let all those go. And so just to have like a moment to like see him like that was like a kiss from the Lord. And I'm just sharing those like as perspective when you're going through hard things. Like it's hard to have perspective, but when you ask the Holy Spirit to be with you, like he really can open your eyes to see like the good in the midst of an absolute tragedy.
Yeah.
Um so we took him home, and we were able to bury him, which was amazing because my midwife like helped pull strings to even do that.
Oh,
um yeah, so we were able to take him home and bury him, but even in that process, like I really believed like, okay, like once I get him out of me, like I'll be okay, like everything will be better and I'll be able to think clearly. And I mean, I have it like written in my journal where I'm like, I thought that it was
oh,
going to get a little easier. And I'm sure, the waiting game was gone in that regard, but it did start another season of like, you know, grief and thinking that okay, once I get home, I'll be okay. And then it's like, okay, once I bury him, I'll be okay. And then weeks or months go by and you look at your husband and he's like, are you okay? And you're like, no, I'm not okay. Like there's definitely a hole and something missing.
yeah.
And it took a lot of time with the Lord and processing and being vulnerable with him, um, for him to like really heal that. So yeah, that's kind of I guess the story in a nutshell, um, from how we lost him.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, I know that wasn't easy, and just with what you've shared, how you've gone back through your journals and just taking that, time to be intentional with yourself and to be able to share so vulnerably here. Like, just thank you
Mm-hmm.
for that first and foremost. And, when you were talking about waiting, like I think about my son, when he wants something immediately and I can't give him some stuff immediately, because it could
Mm-hmm.
hurt him or he's not
Mm-hmm.
ready for it. And I'm not trying to withhold anything from him to hurt him. I'm trying
Mm-hmm.
to like protect him, and God has shown me such a beautiful, image through that, just with my own life of, it's so easy to be like, why, God? Why are you making me wait? Or what are you doing? And he
Mhm.
always has a purpose and a plan for why he's withholding something from us. It's never to hurt us or, to make us feel pain or um to question, but when we are vulnerable with him, like you said, and just taking that to him and allowing the Holy Spirit to just walk through us or walk with us through those things,
Right.
it allows us to align our hearts and our minds and spirits with God and what he has in store for us. And I mean, my heart just hurts. Like I it just hurts hearing your story. And um I just, man,
Mhm.
I'm humbled to just be here to listen to your story. And I love the name Jocko. It's so precious. And like what did that name mean, and or what does it mean, and how did you choose it for your son?
Yeah, so his name means God is gracious,
Oh my
and
God.
we chose it honestly because it's a South African name, and so we were, my husband's family's from South Africa.
Oh, amazing.
But yeah, it definitely is like a declaration over, him and that whole experience that like God gave me a lot of grace to be able to walk through that. Um, yeah, it's been really sweet. Like, and I know that like it is hard, for people to hear these stories. It's hard for people to even talk about difficult things that people have walked through.
Yeah.
But it's like so important. It's so important for us to be vulnerable with each other and to share and to take the risk of sharing too much. I know people that I've spoken to, that are like, I've never had anybody to talk to about this, or, um, they just walked through one after the other, and their family doesn't know, or their kids don't know, and um, yeah, they're in pain. And then when you talk to people, um, people can be awkward about it, like they don't know what to say or they don't know how to respond. And the
Yeah.
reality is people that have gone through stuff like this, like people that I know that have held their baby, that they they appreciate it when you ask them about it.
Yeah.
When you say like, tell me about your son, like tell me about what he looked like who did he favor, and like that, it gives that mother dignity, and it gives her son dignity that like he was a real person that God made in his image.
Yeah.
And so Jocko, yeah, his name is used around our house all the time. Like the kids talk about him all the time. Like he's just a part of the family.
Who did Jocko favor?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did he
Oh,
favor?
sorry.
No, you
Oh,
could.
who
Did
did
he
Jay
favor
favor?
you or Josh?
I would say he looked more like Theo. So, and Theo looks
Theo.
more like Josh. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
And similar
precious.
eyes. Mm-hmm.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I created this space, just so we can have these vulnerable and real conversations so people aren't walking through these seasons by themselves. And
Mm-hmm.
it takes people like you to be vulnerable to do it. And
Mm-hmm.
your family is so beautiful. Y'all need to go look at her family. They all have just like bleach blonde hair. And I'm like, how? Like, it's so
I know.
beautiful.
Thank
You guys are
you.
just beautiful. I didn't
Oh,
know your
thanks.
husband's family was from South Africa. That's really, really cool.
Yes. Yeah.
How was it for you and your husband? Like, how did y'all walk through the season together?
Yeah. I would say um he's amazing. Like he cried with me. Like he felt it. He was there. And like I said, the words out of his mouth were, he's still good.
That was when you said that, I was like, wow. Like that's your
Yeah.
initial response to that. Like just to, know that God is still good and in that moment and not even like
Hmm.
process anything and just to look at you and to be that rock for you. Like that
Hmm.
is so beautiful. It's just like the perfect image of marriage right there.
Yeah. He really is a good husband, and I'm so thankful for him because is he doesn't waver. He's very steady in what he believes and he lives it. And I appreciate that in him. So he was like, no matter what, like, don't forget who God is, that you serve a good God, a good God. And I
Yeah.
mean, one of his favorite stories is the story of Joseph. And it's one thing when you've got a great life and you like, you're like, yeah, sure. But when you do actually walk through something that is devastating to you, like, and then you read, Joseph, and it's like all of these things, like him being sold into slavery, him being thrown into a pit, it was actually for his good.
Yeah.
And
It's so
so,
sorry.
no,
I
you're
was
good.
just the other day, my devotional was about Joseph, and his story just keeps coming up, and it's just like I just feel God trying to nudge me, as a reminder, like God has a purpose in everything, that we go through, and
Yeah.
um he's good no matter what, and he has his plan, and he works everything out for the good of those who love him. And
Mm-hmm.
it's no
Yeah.
coincidence that God just keeps bringing that name up. So that's just
Oh
wild.
yeah. Yeah. And I think that that's for people who like me, I like grew up in a very charismatic church. Like it was there's a lot of the like pray your way through it or like speak it until it happens. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but sometimes you can end up with a triumphanism
Mm,
um theology of or ideology of suffering. And so you're just like, we're just gonna triumph, we're gonna triumph. And like um it's good to pray and you hold these like verses in tension in Ephesians 3 where it says that God can do immeasurably more than we ask
yeah.
or imagine, which is true. But then we also know that in James it says, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, when you face trials of many kinds.
Yeah.
So you're you're holding intention that like I'm gonna pray through things and I'm going to like believe that God can heal or believe that there's brighter days ahead and a light at the end of the tunnel. And then you're also going, okay, but
I'm
like
still feeling that.
yeah, this
It's
is
my
this is
reality.
this is my reality. And this testing of my faith is actually going to produce perseverance if I can keep my eyes locked on the one who created it all. Like if I can keep my eyes on the author, I will be okay. And so that's kind of that's been really, my husband has been amazing in that way because he doesn't allow these circumstances to define God. Like we let the word of God define God, and then we run to the word. And so
That's powerful.
um
Yeah.
yeah. So but I will say too, like men don't grieve the same way as women, and they're gonna be in a different, they're gonna feel things differently, and they're gonna be okay a little faster. And you may feel like you're kind of lagging behind because this happened to your body. You're still bleeding 3 weeks later and you're still experiencing things. And so there were days where like he'd be like, are you okay? And I'm like, no, I'm not okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think just like have grace on them and don't expect them to be able to read your mind. Like communicating with them is very important when you're going through something difficult, so that they can help just support you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's huge just because like you see so many people who like do walk through these and then it really hurts their marriage. And I think just showing grace to your spouse, and I mean, I haven't walked through this, so I'm just speaking from what I
Mm-hmm.
see, and um but yeah, grace is such a huge thing to show no matter what you're walking through with your spouse. And especially when like I don't know, I feel like I would like were you angry at any point with Josh, like feeling like, well, how can you be okay, and like it
Yeah.
was our son. So,
I think I honestly I never felt that towards him. But I honestly I don't think I ever felt mad. And that is not everybody's experience. I know people that have been in shoes like mine that are like, I was so mad at God, and that's okay. Like everyone's going to grieve differently and feel
yeah.
things differently. I felt an overwhelming sadness. Like just an overwhelming disappointment and sadness. And I think the biggest thing for me was I would feel towards maybe like I would feel almost upset with myself if I like was moving on too quickly, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I like because there came a point after we delivered him and we buried him and we did all the things, like I was like, I have no tears left. Like I am exhausted.
Yeah.
And I remember just putting on like a TV show, like Josh and I just sitting on the couch, and we like at some point we're like, we just need to laugh. Like I just need to sit down and like watch The Office and like be distracted because I was so tired. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Um and but that was just for me, like I would almost felt guilty because I was like, is this okay? Like, is this okay to be happy for a moment when something sweet happens? Or, you just
Yeah.
have these weird feelings where you're like at what point am I going to be normal again? But I had a really great friend that had been through something similar. Her story, she lost her baby, I believe at 18 weeks, and he was like alive and like on her chest, and like it was very devastating. And I called her immediately, and she really helped walk me through a lot of that, um a lot of that season. And so, but her advice to me was like, your grieving process is not like you don't just stay grieving for forever. What happens is you'll be okay, and you'll be like, I'm good, and then something happens and like a knife gets stabbed into your chest, and you're like, I'm not okay right now.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it felt for me, to where I would just I would I would grieve, and then it was like, okay, I need to kind of come out of this, even for the sake of my family, right? Like I want to, I still need to be a mother for them. And
Yeah.
but you're kind of you're okay, and you're okay to be okay, and then all of a sudden something will happen that will kind of trigger you, and then it just kind of turns you back to prayer, and it turns you back to, God, are you with me still? Like, do you see
Yeah.
me? Are you sad too? Like, what are your thoughts towards me? What are your emotions towards me? Um, so that's kind of how it felt for me. But yeah, it wasn't as much anger as it was like just disappointment and sadness.
Yeah. Yeah. That's like really, that's a really powerful just like example for everything, and like just turning back to God when you felt those triggers, like especially when people who have experienced trauma and just these hurtful seasons, triggers happen. And
Mm-hmm.
just from my own story, like I used to experience triggers so very often. And whether it be a name or like a word or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like being able to take those triggers to God and asking him to work with you through those things. And I love how you said, like, are you sad with me? Like,
Mm-hmm.
God will answer you, like he'll show you what he's feeling. And you know, he's Elroy. He's the God who sees us and
Mm-hmm.
is with us, and he hears our cries and he sees our sadness. And I just love that, like, you just like throughout your entire story that you shared, like God has just been a constant for you. And I just feel like that's just such a testament to your faith and who you are. And I know having a supportive husband was so huge for you. And I remember watching, like, as y'all posted the photos of y'all burying Jocko, and I was like, what a beautiful moment for you guys as a family. And you said like you had to still be a mom for your other kids, and like how did y'all walk through that as a family, like especially with your other kids? Like I'm sure that was, I mean, all kinds of heavy and
Mm-hmm.
emotional turmoil.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think people, I actually get this question a lot, and I wonder, like, it felt so normal for us to like involve our kids.
Yeah,
I personally think that kids are so much smarter than we give them credit for. And
100%.
so like trying to like, shelter them from all of it just didn't seem like it was going to be effective, or it was going to even help them. Especially like they were all in the room with me, and I don't regret it. Like for me, um that was we all went through together, that my kids are going to talk about forever.
Yeah.
And Kaya, she was 4, so she obviously felt it the most at the time.
Mm.
She cried the whole way home, and she was like, I mean, she told me in the back seat, "Mommy, we can get another baby." And I was like, "Yeah, but I really, really loved that one."
Yeah.
And so that was hard for her. Like she and she I didn't feel like I needed to necessarily like shelter her from anything. She was there, she knew what happened. We talk about him all the time, and there's something really special about the way that kids just respond to like situations that they don't give you like the very awkward like, "Oh no, oh," they're like, "What did he look like? How big was he?" Like, "Mommy," like Ely would bring me a blanket. She's like, This is Jocko's blanket. It needs to be put in heaven. Like, how do you put this in heaven?"
Oh my God.
And you're like, and it is moments like that where like it brought my heart like comfort. Like I wasn't alone.
Okay.
They were making it easy to talk about him because it
That's
was
so
just
beautiful.
so, yeah, it was just so normal for them. And I really appreciate that. They talk about him like when they go to heaven, he's going to be like their tour guide and he's going to show them all around. And it's just like really sweet.
It's so
But
sweet.
yeah, and I think adults are like afraid to say the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And I get it. Especially, you see stuff on social media and they're like, this is what not to say to somebody who's grieving or something. And I totally get it because everybody needs to, be sensitive. But at the same time, we've almost like made it so difficult to talk to people who have been through hard things because we're so
Mhm.
afraid that we're going to say the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And I would encourage people to just like ask questions and be uh take the risk of going too far just so that that person feels seen. And
Yeah.
you as a person always have a voice to say like, I'm not comfortable sharing that, but I don't know, like kids are different. Like they're just easy to talk to about some of that. I will say though, like we definitely like there were points where I had to look at Kaya in the eyes and I was like, "You've seen mommy cry a lot. I just need you to know I'm going to be okay." And
Mhm.
like mommy is sad right now, but I am okay. And in our home, like I'm like, it's okay to be sad. Like you're
Yeah.
allowed to have these emotions, but I'm not going to be sad forever.
Yeah.
And so there is a point, when you're grieving to make sure that you're, you know, not creating like insecurity in your kid because you're like a basket case all the time. And
Yeah.
so for me, like when I say that I'm bringing them into it, like it's yes, they saw me cry. Yes, they experienced a lot of emotions with me. But I was intentional about telling them like mommy is okay. Mommy's going to be okay and we're going to get through this. And I think that that's really important so that they're not feeling insecure.
Yeah. I love that. Like, and just like about asking questions, like I went into this, I was like, I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to be insensitive.
Mhm.
And, but just being, here, and showing up for you and each other and other people who need this of support in their lives. Like that's what I was focusing on, and
Mhm.
it is, we need to be more vulnerable with each other. And like, especially in the day and age of social media, like everything is just kind of like, I don't know, people just don't really have relationships or conversations.
Mhm.
And it's just everybody's distracted.
Mhm.
And it's all just like very surface level. And just like the fact that your kids get to grow up in a home of like two parents who love them so much and who get to see God's goodness firsthand, like through your healing and your husband's healing and just all of it. I mean,
Mhm.
it's been so beautiful to watch you as you walk through all of this with your family and have your kids a part of all of that. And I mean, I kudos. Like that's just
We're
like
trying.
God, like man, he just gives you the
Yeah.
strength and that peace that you were talking about and to get you through that and God's grace, like
Mhm.
talking about having another baby, right? Like
Mhm.
you did have another baby and now you have your sweet son, Hutch, right?
Yes, Hachi.
Yeah, Hutchie. How was all of that? Like, did you face feelings of fear or guilt or? And like,
Mhm.
what did that do for your relationship with God?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that is a very different pregnancy once you've gone through loss like that.
I'm sure.
So it was 4 months later that I got pregnant, which is like such a gift from the Lord. I was so thankful. Um, and yes, absolutely, there was fear and anxiety and just worry. But I really believe in taking every thought captive. That is so important. Like
Yeah.
you can do that. You have a
Yeah,
choice of
exactly.
what you're going to meditate on. And so I would pray, and I remember being on my knees the night before I went in for his anatomy scan. And I was in my bedroom on my knees and I was crying out to God and I was pleading with him. And I said, please, 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 if you would just trust me with this one, like I promise I will give him to you. I will put him in your hands. I will do whatever you need me to do if you will just trust me with him. And I said, and if not, I promise I will honor you the same way I did before.
Mhm.
And so that was really my prayer over Hutch, was just please God. And I felt like Hannah, like, you know, crying out before the Lord about Samuel. Like, that's that feeling of, if you will allow me to raise this child, like I will do everything I can to be sure that he knows you and that he is given back to you. And the reality is, like, you're not promised their health, like, even when they're here.
Yeah.
So that's something that, like, you have to do even when they're, you know, in your arms and they're healthy and they're running around. Like I've told Josh, like it takes a moment of an accident to where your child is taken away, or you're walking a road that you could have never imagined. And
Yeah.
so it's today that I have to hold them with open hands and say, they're yours, and use me to raise them to know you, to raise them to give glory to you in whatever situation and circumstance they're in. And so yeah, the reality is, my like suffering and what I went through with losing Jocko, as awful as it was, it put me on my knees before the Lord in a way that I had not done with my other ones
Yeah.
previously. I thought I had, you know, I thought I
Mhm.
had said, you know, and I'm gonna raise them to know you.
Yeah.
There's just this different, there is something different in my soul now, because I have handed one of my children to the Lord, that says, like, okay, like what a privilege it is that
Yeah.
he has entrusted me with this soul.
Mhm.
So yeah, it definitely changes things. And so when you look at your suffering that way, you realize that you're being sanctified, and it's so beautiful, actually, you know. So and anyways, he's literally the most precious, like, rainbow baby. He's so cuddly and sweet and funny, and like he's so obedient. I'm like, I don't even deserve him. Like, he's just a great little boy. And I literally am so thankful that we even have the privilege to raise him.
Yeah, he is so cute. I like watch the videos and stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, like
Yeah,
it
I
brings,
can't.
yeah, it brings my heart so much joy that like this is a season that like God was able to like get you to, you know, and
Hmm.
with your obedience through the valley, through the desert, you know, and I mean it's just so beautiful. It's just a testament to who God is and his grace and um yeah, like when we walk through these things, it is just sanctification, you know, becoming more and more like Jesus. And um it's just beautiful how God can just like, I don't know, strengthen us and transform everything. And I have to walk through that like with my son, like when you talked about like giving your son or like your kids to God, like even after everything, like
Hmm.
of fear that I have to take captive constantly is like, what if something happens? Like, what if he's taken from me? And, you know, going through my pregnancy, I was so scared that like I wasn't worthy of being a mom or, you know, carrying my baby. And like I felt like I was so afraid that God was going to punish me for the things that I've
Mhm.
done and the things that I've been through. And I had to take all of that to like my dear friend who, she's my mentor, and just have her walk through all of that with me. And it helped me just completely change the way that I view God and his character. And I've just, because of the things that I've been through, I've always questioned, like, is God good all the time?
Mhm.
And he is. Like, he is good all the time. And like there's nothing that, like, his character does not waver, he's
Mhm.
the same. And um just as I watch my boy now, like I'm just constantly praying, like, God, like, just protect him, and help me control my thoughts, and like
Mhm.
it's God, he's their protector. Like, we can only do what we can do. And it's
Mhm.
just a constant thing daily to just lay him down at the feet of
Mhm.
Jesus, and um yeah, that just made me think of my own sweet little boy. And I know so many people who do walk through trauma, and like sexual trauma, especially, like we just don't feel worthy
Mhm.
of that, and we're terrified that we're going to like raise a child who will either experience something like of the same, or like will make them so afraid of life that like they won't want to do anything. And
Yeah.
it's just been walking through all of that with God, and knowing that God's not here to punish us, like
Mm-mm.
through that whole pregnancy, I was just like, he's not gonna punish me. He's not, like, I have to trust that he is good, and like he's not gonna do this. But yeah, so just hearing your story has been really healing for me. And like, how with your husband, like how did that strengthen y'all? Like, did it strengthen your relationship and shaped all of that for you?
Yeah, I think it did. And what you're saying, what I hear you saying about, believing, you start to wrestle with things that you believe. Like
Mhm.
what you're saying, how you're going, okay, is this a punishment? Like, did I do something wrong? And stuff like this really does bring up your own theology, like what you think about
Yeah,
God. And
yeah,
so, yeah, it did put Josh and I on our own journey of like why bad things happen to good people, and like, and you start searching for truth, and especially being able to do that together and to be on the same page, and to start listening to podcasts about people who have suffered, and like getting in those circles to where you go, okay, like, what does God say about this? It makes you rewire your brain, and you're
yeah.
going, okay, even if the worst thing happened to my son, to my family, like, it's not a punishment.
Mm.
It's just that you live in a fallen world,
Yep.
and I'm gonna do my best to glorify God with whatever cards have been dealt in front of me.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it pushes you to pray. I pray protection over my kids every single night. That's it. Like, I just ask, Lord, that you'd protect them, that you would protect their minds and protect their body, protect their spirit. Like, it just pushes you into prayer instead of yeah, like, I don't think I think it's so helpful to wrestle with those questions, to put a red flag on them when they come up in your mind, and to dig into the word to figure out, like,
Yeah.
why do I believe that? Like, um, so yeah, you end up doing work, and especially if you have someone to do it with, like Josh. Josh is awesome. Like, he'll, share things with me in the word, and we'll dig through it together. And I've definitely gotten to a point, and even just watching other friends and people who have walked roads they never would have thought that they would walk. Like God is going to do a work in them, and he's going to
Mhm.
complete what he started. And even though you don't have all the answers, it takes a lot of humility to trust that he knows what he's doing, and that
Yeah.
he's going to be with you. It really does.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, and you get to a point too where you go like, do I think that like God owes me something? Like, what are my expectations that, like, God owes me health, wealth, and happiness? Like, he really doesn't,
No.
and so I think he wants something so much more out of us, and it's our heart, and that can actually it can actually be amazing when you watch people that suffer well to see the kind of person that they are afterwards. It's just so beautiful. And you can see, people who didn't suffer well and how it's like there's this
Mhm.
bitterness that, overwhelms them, and they're just not easy to be with. And you kind of get to, when you're walking through stuff like this, you get to ask yourself like who you want to be, like
Yeah.
how do I, what do I want to be to other people? Because it goes one way, you're going to go one way or the other.
Yep.
Um,
Well, you are a
so,
light. That
oh,
is what
thank you.
you are. You are a light.
Oh, it's not my own doing, that's for sure.
No, 100%. And like that's the thing. You give God the glory for all of it, Like that's why you're a light.
Yes, yeah, it's so true. Yeah, so good.
I love like this whole entire episode has just been incredible. Just listening to your story, getting to connect with you again. And I love leaving our listeners with real life practical steps for healing. So what are three, or if you don't have three, that's okay, but three practical steps for someone to start doing for themselves and with their spouse if they're walking through this incredibly difficult season of loss?
Hmm. Yeah, so I would say one of the things that really helped was journaling.
Mm.
And it's funny because I will go like months and months without journaling, and then
Same.
I'll pick it up. Yeah, and then every time I pick it up, I'm like, why am I not doing this more? Because
Yeah.
sometimes once that pen just gets going, I'm like, okay, I had a lot to say that I didn't realize. And it's almost like the Holy Spirit will start answering questions, or you'll start
Mm.
declaring things over your life or over your situation,
Yeah,
just by being intentional about sitting there and writing. So I'm so thankful that I did that. And sometimes you don't know what to do, and you don't know where to look in your Bible, and you don't know what words to say. So if you're going through something, I think just like pulling out a notebook and paper and just write, and just ask yourself to do it once a day, even if it's like one or two lines, just writing it out is super helpful.
yeah, I love that.
Yeah, so that was one. And then the other one was communicate. So that was like the most helpful thing for me, was the fact that I was surrounded by friends and family and a husband. And I think that I've talked to way too many women who have not had anyone to process with, or they didn't know that they were able to like share with someone what they went through.
Yeah.
And I like at this point, I have a really incredible community here, and I have a friend that lost a baby like a couple days ago, and my friends all pulled together. There was a basket on her doorstep of like all kinds of um, goods and just like sweet notes, and we're praying for you, and like what meals can we bring. Like having people love and care for you is priceless,
Yeah.
and they can't do that if you don't talk about it. So my biggest thing is to just really really communicate with somebody or someone, otherwise it comes up later,
Yeah.
somehow, so um and then the last one was just to seek God daily. And I know that that's going to look different for different people and like how they do that. But I would say that, working out what you believe about God before you walk through a tragedy is very important. And so, your theology matters. And I know that we like, just want to kind of, read the word for a couple minutes and go to church. But like, if you're not doing the work of like, what does it mean if something bad happens to me? Is God punishing me? Like, um, it, what does it mean that suffering is for my own good? Like these questions must be worked out in your heart, so that when it happens to you, you are ready, and your heart is not um led astray. Because I'll say like there's gonna your people are gonna grieve differently, and not everybody is gonna have the same path of grief, and some people are gonna need longer to shed tears, and some people are going to need more quiet time, and some people are going to need more outlets of friendship and community to like help me just be distracted. Like everyone's going to have different ways of grieving, so it's not that there's one way or right way, but I do think that there can be, as a Christian, there can be a wrong way of grieving, and that's a road of bitterness and self-pity. And um, I feel like those moments where you're taking thoughts captive and you're like, okay, like I'm just feeling really sorry for myself because I think that I deserve more than I actually do. And that is hard and that's humbling to do that. Or, I'm starting to feel bitter and resentful towards God because of what he's taken from me. Like these are thoughts that if you meditate on them, they take you down a road of bitterness. And
Yeah.
those thoughts, they can destroy you, they can destroy, I would say, as a mother, like your peace is like the most crucial part of the home. Like if mom's not okay, the whole house is not okay.
Yeah.
So working through, your relationship with God, your theology, what you believe about suffering, um, it really matters. And it could be, especially as, moms out there, like, 10 minutes a day in the word, just like getting the word into your mind and spending a little bit of time praying, even if it's, just while you're folding laundry, getting your mind back on the things of God is gonna really carry you. It's the only thing that will carry you through
Yeah, exactly.
storms like that. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, it really is. He is the only one who can get you through all of it. And I mean, we're both walking testimonies of that, only God.
Hmm.
And I love like those are such practical steps and we can do all of those. And I walked through a road of bitterness. And so I know how like that can be. And it is destructive and it literally will lead you away from God the way that it did me.
Hmm.
'Cause I was so angry with him, just so many questions, so many doubts of his character and him. And because I grew up in a church where like it was hell and brim
Stones. Yeah. Yeah.
brimstone, like that's
I got you.
style, that's not it. Brimstone is like thinking that God was going to punish me and like that he's angry with me. And I had to change the way that I believe in God and like my theology, like you were saying, like that is so crucial just to really know who God is. Um, and that's just like that's such a practical thing to do. All of those are. So thank you. Just thank you so much, Kristie,
Oh
for giving
yeah.
away some of your time to chat with me and us. And thank you for opening up your heart and being authentic and vulnerable by sharing your testimony and healing journey, all with the desire to help others walk through their own desert. And it really has been an absolute honor to meet you at the well and to connect with you again after all these years and talk about how a life with Jesus helps you get through even the most difficult seasons. I pray that those who are listening are filled with hope, encouragement, and comfort as you continue to meet Jesus at the well. You can find Kristie on Instagram at Kristie.Swart. It's Kristie.Swart. We love you, friend, and we are here cheering you on.
Thank you so much, Catherine. It's been such a pleasure.
Thanks. Um, okay, I can never find, oh, literally right in my face. Okay, the stop button. Did it stop?